Ukraine launched 25 missiles at Russia's Black Sea base. Explosions ripped across docks and depots, shaking Sevastopol awake. For a few minutes, it looked like Ukraine had scored its biggest strike yet, but the victory would not last. What happened next changed everything. At 3:19 a.m., Ukraine fired its largest strike yet against the Black Sea Fleet. 25 missiles, a mix of Storm Shadow cruise missiles and Neptune systems, streaked low across the sea. They flew under radar, approaching Sevastopol from multiple directions. The targets were clear: fuel depots, ammunition storage, radar towers, and docks. Ukrainian commanders wanted to overwhelm Russia's defenses in one decisive blow. Inside Sevastopol, the first sign came as air raid sirens wailed through the night. Russian sailors scrambled from their bunks. Searchlights swept across the harbor. Radar operators shouted warnings as the screens lit up with dozens of incoming objects. Crews rushed to man their stations, but the missiles were already seconds away. The first impact came when a fuel depot exploded in a massive fireball. The blast spread instantly to neighboring tanks, flames racing across the storage yard. Heat rolled through the docks, knocking sailors off their feet. Within minutes, the sky above Sevastopol glowed orange. At 3:25 a.m., another missile slammed into an ammunition site. The explosion was even larger, setting off stored shells and rockets in a chain of violent detonations. Shrapnel tore through nearby vehicles. Debris rained across the waterfront. Windows shattered across the city as shockwaves pushed outwards. A radar tower was hit next. The structure collapsed in seconds, its twisted frame crashing into the yard below. Another strike ripped apart a dockside crane, throwing its wreckage into the harbor. Ships moored nearby rocked violently as flames lit the piers. Finally, Russia's air defenses responded. S-400 batteries fired interceptors into the night sky. Bright streaks cut across the darkness as the missiles chased their targets. Several Ukrainian missiles were destroyed mid-air, their fragments falling into the sea. But not all were stopped. Enough broke through to keep pounding the base. By 3:28 a.m., fires burned across the docks. Ammunition still cooked off in the distance. Smoke rose high into the night, visible for miles. On Ukrainian command screens, the strike looked like a clear success. For a moment, it appeared Sevastopol had been crippled, but inside Russian command posts, officers already knew the truth and were preparing their response. By 3:31 a.m., explosions still lit up Sevastopol, but the destruction was not what it looked like from the outside. Ukraine believed it had crippled the Black Sea Fleet, but Russia had prepared for this moment. Many of the biggest fireballs came from decoys, not real fuel or ammunition. Tanks filled with water and chemicals were built to burn brightly when hit. Old radar towers had been left standing to act as bait. Even some of the ships moored along the piers were dummy silhouettes designed to fool Ukrainian drones. To observers watching from afar, the base looked shattered. Fire tore through storage yards, towers collapsed, smoke plumes reached into the night sky. But inside the command bunkers, Russian officers were calm. Submarines sat safely in hardened pens. Fuel reserves were buried in reinforced underground tanks. High-value radar systems were still intact. The dramatic scenes outside were only part of the picture, a picture Russia had staged. Crews rushed to the visible blazes, dragging hoses across the yards and spraying water at towering flames. Ammunition crates exploded in secondary blasts, but these too had been staged in sacrifice zones. It looked chaotic, but most of the Black Sea Fleet's real strength was untouched. Ukrainian planners thought they had crippled operations. In truth, their missiles had been absorbed by expendable targets. At 3:35 a.m., inside Sevastopol's operations center, commanders confirmed their deception had worked. They knew the damage looked catastrophic, but critical assets were untouched. It was time to move to the next step: retaliation. Orders were relayed across the chain of command. Submarines in the Black Sea were given the green light. Two 22 M3 bombers stood ready at their airfields. Naval vessels prepared missile salvos. The counterstrike phase was beginning. Ukrainian drone feeds still showed smoke columns and fires. Celebrations broke out among some monitoring units who believed Russia's most important naval base had been smashed. But the real mistake was already made. Kiev had revealed launch sites, exposed firing platforms, and drawn Russian forces into action. The trap that Russia had set with decoys was about to be answered with live fire. By 3:40 a.m., the deception phase was complete. Sevastopol burned on the surface, but underground and at sea, Russia was ready to strike back. At 4:02 a.m., the counterstrike began. Russian submarines hidden in the Black Sea broke the surface with fire, launching salvos of caliber cruise missiles. Their engines roared as they streaked low over the water, heading straight for Ukraine's southern coast. Almost at the same time, two 22 M3 bombers lifted off from Russian airfields. Their payloads were air-launched ballistic missiles designed to smash hardened sites deep inside Ukraine. Minutes later, calibers crossed the shoreline. Explosions ripped through suspected Ukrainian launch zones near Odessa and Mykolaiv. Craters tore into fields and storage areas where mobile batteries had been spotted earlier. Flames spread through destroyed trucks and equipment. Russian state media would later claim enemy launchers eliminated, but the truth was simple. Several firing positions had been silenced. Russian frigates and corvettes joined in. From their decks, anti-ship missiles blasted into the night, targeting areas where Ukraine's small naval platforms were thought to be hiding. Drones circled above, scanning the coast, transmitting coordinates for precision strikes. Sevastopol had been attacked, but now the hunt was on, to find and destroy every Ukrainian unit that had fired. A command post near Odessa was hit. The building collapsed, vehicles outside bursting into flames. Another missile slammed into an air defense battery, its radar tower shattering before the launcher itself detonated in a massive fireball. Ukrainian crews scattered, many unable to regroup under the constant strikes. By 4:15 a.m., two 22 M3 bombers dropped their missiles. Warheads struck hardened shelters, bunkers, and suspected storage facilities inland. Massive explosions echoed across the countryside. Fires lit up positions miles from the coast, further reducing Ukraine's ability to mount another raid. The Black Sea itself became a battle zone. Russian ships pushed their radar coverage outward, creating a wall to block future launches. More calibers roared from subs and surface ships, aimed at supply points and communications hubs. Ukraine's air defenses intercepted some, but too many slipped through. By 4:25 a.m., the scale was clear. Ukraine had landed its strike on Sevastopol, but Moscow had answered with overwhelming firepower. From the air, from the sea, from the land, Russia unleashed a storm. The night sky over southern Ukraine glowed with explosions. The counterstrike had only just begun. The exchange slowed. Fires still burned across Sevastopol, but Russian command confirmed that the Black Sea Fleet's core assets were intact. Submarines stayed in hardened pens. Underground fuel tanks were untouched. Advanced radar systems still functioned. The dramatic images of flames and explosions told one story, but the reality was different. Russia had absorbed the strike and survived. On the Ukrainian side, losses were heavy. Several mobile launchers that fired the 25 missile barrage were destroyed in the counterstrikes. At least two command posts along the coast were reduced to rubble. Air defense sites that had protected launch crews were hit and silenced. The daring raid had delivered a message, but it came with a cost Kiev could not ignore. At 5:20 a.m., Moscow pushed its version of the night. Russian state media broadcast footage of caliber launches and burning wreckage on Ukrainian soil. Anchors repeated the line that Ukraine's strike was a failed gamble, pointing out that much of Sevastopol's damage came from decoys. For the Russian audience, the narrative was clear. The fleet was safe, and Ukraine had lost more than it gained. Kiev countered with its own images. Satellite shots of Sevastopol covered in smoke were shared widely. Officials declared the strike a success, proof that even Russia's most fortified bases could be reached. The fact that some targets were decoys didn't matter. To Ukrainians, the message was powerful. No base was untouchable. Civilians across Crimea recorded videos of fire and smoke still rising over the harbor. In southern Ukraine, families emerged from shelters to see craters left by Russian counterstrikes. Both sides understood the escalation. The Black Sea front was now more dangerous than before. By 6 a.m., the battle was over. Ukraine had shown its reach, striking Sevastopol with 25 missiles. Russia had shown its response, turning one raid into a night of overwhelming retaliation. Both sides claimed victory. Both sides told their people they had won. The true message was simple. For Moscow, strike a Black Sea base, and you will pay tenfold. For Kiev, Sevastopol can burn, and no Russian stronghold is safe. For the rest of the world, the night proved that the war in the Black Sea was only moving closer to a larger clash. This was a strike that shook the Black Sea, but was it a bold success or a dangerous miscalculation? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective adds to the bigger picture of this conflict. If this breakdown gave you clarity, hit like and subscribe so you won't miss our next deep dive into the battlefield. This is Navy Point, where every strike has a story. See you on the next mission.